Alrighty, kids. Final chapter, final part. So they've just had their coronation, and Aslan slipped away. And we are picking up right about where my card is. Now, as you see, the story is nearly, but not quite, at an end. These 2 kings and 2 queens governed Narnia well, and long and happy was their reign. At first, much of their time was spent in seeking out the remnants of the White Witch's army and destroying them. And indeed, for a long time there would be news of evil things lurking in the wilder parts of the forest, a haunting here and a killing there, a glimpse of a werewolf one month, and a rumor of a hag the next. But in the end, all that foul brood was stamped out. Now, remnant is the group that remains, and brood is like a group of people or beings. And they made good laws and kept the peace and saved good trees from being unnecessarily cut down, and liberated young dwarves and young satyrs from being sent to school, and generally stopped busybodies and interferers, and encouraged ordinary people who wanted to live and let live. And they drove back the fierce giants, quite a different sort from the giant Rumblebuffin, on the north of Narnia, when these ventured across the frontier. And they entered into friendship and alliance, or agreement, with the countries beyond the sea, and paid them visits of state, and received visits of state from them. That's like when kings and queens and presidents and stuff go visit each other. And they themselves grew and changed as the years passed over them. Peter became a tall and deep-chested man and a great warrior, and he was called King Peter the Magnificent. And Susan grew into a tall and gracious woman with black hair that fell almost to her feet, and the kings of the countries beyond the sea began to send ambassadors asking for her hand in marriage, and she was called Susan the Gentle. Edmund was a graver and quieter man than Peter, and great in counsel and judgment. That means he was very wise. He was called King Edmund the Just. But as for Lucy, she was always gay or happy and golden-haired, and all the princes in these parts desired her to be their queen. And her own people called her Queen Lucy the Valiant. So they lived in great joy, and if ever they remembered their life in this world, it was only as one remembers a dream. And one year, it fell out that Tumnus, who was a middle-aged fawn by now and beginning to be stout, or short, came down river and brought them the news that the white stag had once more appeared in his parts, the white stag who would give you wishes if you caught him. So these 2 kings and 2 queens, with the principal members of their court, or the most important people that they hunt with, rode hunting with horns and hounds in the western woods to follow the white stag. And they had not hunted long before they had a sight of him. And he led them a great pace over rough and smooth and through thick and thin, till the horses of all the courtiers were tired out, as the people of the court, and these 4 were still following. And they saw the stag enter into a thicket where the horses could not follow. Then said King Peter, for they talked in a quite different style now, having been kings and queens for so long, "Fair consorts, let us now alight from our horses, or get off, and follow this beast into the thicket, for in all my days I never hunted a nobler quarry." Something nobler is like a greater, and quarry is like a find. That'll be a fun picture to look at when we get to it. "Sir," said the others, "even so let us do." So they alighted and tied their horses to trees and went on into the thick wood on foot. And as soon as they entered it, Queen Susan said, "Fair friends, here's a great marvel, for I seem to see a tree of iron." Now, a marvel is something that's amazing to see. A tree of iron. Let's look at the picture, see what we can see. "Madam," said King Edmund, "if you look well upon it, you shall see it is a pillar of iron with a lantern set on top thereof." Does that look familiar from an earlier part of the story? "By the lion's mane, a strange device," said King Peter, "to set a lantern here where the trees cluster so thick about it, and so high above it, that if it were lit, it should give light to no man." "Sir," said Queen Lucy, "by likelihood, when this post and this lamp were set here, there were smaller trees in the place, or fewer or none, for this is a young wood, and the iron post is old." And they stood looking upon it. Then said King Edmund, "I know not how it is, but this lamp on the post worketh upon me strangely. It runs in my mind that we have seen the like before, as it were in a dream, or in the dream of a dream." "Sir," answered they all, "it is even so with us also." "And more," said Queen Lucy, "for it will not go out of my mind that if we pass this post and lantern, either we shall find strange adventures or else some great change of our fortunes." "Madam," said King Edmund, "the like foreboding stirreth in my heart also. I have the same gut feeling as you," as he sang. "And in mine, fair brother," said King Peter, "and in mine too," said Queen Susan. "Wherefore, by my counsel, we shall lightly return to our horses and follow this white stag no further." "Madam," said King Peter, "therein I pray thee to have me excused, for never since we four were kings and queens in Narnia have we set our hands to any high matter as battles, quests, feats of arms, acts of justice, and the like, and then given over. But always what we have taken in hand, the same we have achieved. So we saying we've always had success in everything we did here. Let's go for it." "Sister," said Queen Lucy, "my royal brother speaks rightly, and it seems to me we should be shamed if, for any fearing or foreboding, we turned back from following so noble a beast as we now have in chase." Lucy is saying we shouldn't let fear stop us. "And so say I," said King Edmund, "and I have such desire to find the signification of this thing that I would not by my good will turn back for the richest jewel in Narnia and all the islands." Edmund's saying, "I want to know what this means. What's the meaning of this?" "Then in the name of Aslan," said Queen Susan, if ye will all have it so, let us go on and take the adventure that shall fall to us." So these kings and queens entered the thicket, and before they had gone a score of paces, now a score is a old fancy word for 20, before they had gone 20 steps, 20 paces, they all remembered that the thing they had seen was called a lamppost, and before they had gone 20 more, they noticed that they were making their way not through branches but through coats. The next moment they all came tumbling out of a wardrobe door into the empty room, and they were no longer kings and queens in their hunting array, but just Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy in their old school clothes. It was the same day and the same hour of the day on which they had all gone into the wardrobe to hide. Mrs. Macready and the visitors were still talking in the passage, but luckily they never came into the empty room, and so the children weren't caught. And that would have been the very end of the story if it hadn't been that they felt they really must explain to the professor why 4 of the coats out of his wardrobe were missing. And the professor, who was a very remarkable man, didn't tell them not to be silly or not to tell lies, but believed the whole story. "No," he said, "I don't think it will be any good trying to go back through the wardrobe door to get the coats. You won't get into Narnia again by that route. Nor would the coats be much use by now if you did, eh? What's that? Yes, of course you'll get back into Narnia again someday. Once a king in Narnia, always a king in Narnia. But don't go trying to use the same route twice. Indeed, don't try to get there at all. It'll happen when you're not looking for it. And don't talk too much about it, even among yourselves. And don't mention it to anyone else, unless you find that they've had adventures of the same sort themselves." "What's that? How will you know?" "Oh, you'll know all right. Odd things they say, even their looks will let the secret out. Keep your eyes open. Bless me, what do they teach them at these schools?" And that is the very end of the adventure of the wardrobe. But if the professor was right, it was only the beginning of the adventures in Narnia.